Welcome to section 10.2 graph y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We are going to be talking about the properties of the quadratic function graph. But before we get there, I want to point out that we have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c for the quadratic equation. Welcome to section 10.2 graph y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We are going to be talking about the properties of the quadratic function graph. But before we get there, I want to point out that y equals ax squared plus bx plus c is the quadratic equation, which will come up here in a little bit. So first, we know that the parabola opens up if a is greater than 0. So for example, the parabola would open up if a is 2 because a is greater than 0. But what a are we talking about? We are talking about that a right there. So if that is a 2, the parabola will open up. The parabola will open down if a is less than 0. So a could be negative 1. Negative 1 is less than 0. So if that a was negative 1, this parabola would now open up the other way. Next property is that if a, the absolute value of a, is greater than 1, we will know that there will be a vertical stretch. And if the absolute value of a is greater than 0 and less than 1, so maybe a fraction or a decimal, that there will be a vertical shrink going on. It will be wider than the parent graph. Next, and a very important property here, that the axis of symmetry of our parabola will be negative b over 2a. And remember, this is going to be our axis of symmetry. This red dotted line is the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is this red dotted line. Next property is that the y-intercept is c. Right? On this point here, the first number is the x, which will have to be 0. The next number will be c, and that is the y-intercept. Right? It's going through the y-axis. This number will be the y-intercept. So let's go ahead and graph some of these guys. Now remember, I'm going to bring up the quadratic equation right here to match up our numbers. The first thing we want to do is plot our axis of symmetry using negative b over 2a. So I'm going to put my negative down. My b is a negative 8. So I put my negative 8 in. Over 2 times a, which is 2. So now, remember, negative and a negative make a positive, so it's 8 over 4. 8 over 4 simplifies to 2. Now we have our axis of symmetry, so go ahead there and put your axis of symmetry at negative 2. Look at that nice straight line that I put at, a positive 2. A nice straight line at positive 2. Next, after you find your axis of symmetry, you have to plug this axis of symmetry, this 2, into our equation for x. So I'm going to plug it in, and it's going to look like 2 times 2, which is our axis of symmetry, squared, minus 8 times 2 plus 7. So we're going to go ahead and simplify this a little bit. 2 times 4 minus 16 plus 7 equals a negative 1. So this was my x value. We just found the y value. So we just found our vertex, which is 2, negative 1. So from my origin, I'm going to go over 2 down to a negative 1 and plot my vertex. So I just plotted my vertex. Now, after you plotted your vertex, you are going to go back up to step 1, and you are going to choose two values that are less than this number here, this 2. So I'm going to choose two values that are less than 2. Well, I know that one value is less than 2, that is 1. So I'm going to put now this 1 in for this x and that x. So here we go. We go 2 times 1 squared minus 8 times 1 plus 7. And if you just want to punch that right into your calculator, that will give me a positive 1. So this is my x that I plugged in for x. So this is 1. That's going to give me, coordinate point 1, 1. So I'm going to plot this point. So I start at my origin, go over 1, up 1, plot a point. But remember, I have to choose 2 points that are less than 2. So I'm going to go ahead and pick 0 and plug 0 in for all my x values. And you just punch that into your calculator. And you find that this is a positive 7, giving me a coordinate point 0, 7. So 0, I don't have to go anywhere from my origin, but I have to go up 7. So I go up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I get there, I put a point. Now, for number 4, I have to decide, will my parabola open up or down? Well, we know that this A is positive, so A is positive, so that tells me that the parabola opens up. Well, are my points moving up from the vertex? You betcha, they sure are, so I have the right idea. Next, for number 5, I have to reflect my points. So I'm going to use this green point here at 1, 1. I go 1 to the axis of symmetry, so I have to now go 1 away from it because it's an axis of symmetry. Then my next green point is 2 away from the axis of symmetry, so I go 2 to the axis of symmetry and then 2 away and draw my next point. Now look, we have 5 points that we can connect, so let's do our best to connect the 5 points. And again, your drawing skills are still probably better than mine. And remember, we are still drawing a parabola, and it should be a U-shape at the bottom. It is a U-shaped graph. Your graph will look more like a U than mine will. Next one, let's try another one. Here we have this guy. We have our -2 for our A, 12 for our B, and -7 for our C. Again, the first thing that we have to do is find the axis of symmetry. We find the axis of symmetry using -b over 2a. Well, I'm going to put my negative, my b, right? My 12 matches up with my b, so my b has to be 12 over 2 times a, which is a -2. So I have -12 over a -4, which simplifies to be 3. So now I know that my axis of symmetry is 3. So I'm going to go ahead and plot my axis of symmetry by this red line. Next thing I have to do is find my vertex. So I'm going to plug this 3 in for that x. So I'm going to go -2 times 3 squared plus 12 times 3 minus 7. I'm going to take it one more step. I'm going to take it -2 times 9 plus 36 minus 7. And that's going to give us a whopping 11. So this was my axis of symmetry, which was an x, and this was my vertex 11. So my y was 11. So my vertex is 311. So I go over 3 up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and plot my vertex. So now for step number 3, remember I have to pick 2 points that are less than my x or my axis of symmetry, which was 3. So 2 points less than 3. Well, 1 point less than 3 would be 2. So I'm going to plug this 2 in for my x's. So I have -2 times 2 squared plus 12 times 2 minus 7, which gives me a big old 9. So now I put in 2 for x, so that's going to be my x value, and it gave me 9. So I'm going to go ahead and plot coordinate point 2, 9. So over 2 up 9. Boom. Put a point. Next, I still have to pick one more point, so I'm going to pick 1. I'm going to put 1 in for all my x values. So I have -2 times 1 squared plus 12 times 1 minus 7, and that's going to give me a positive 3. So again, I put in 1 for my x, and I came out with 3 for my y. So let's go ahead and graph that point. So over 1, up, 1, 2, 3, boom, put a point. Next, for step 4, does the parabola open up or down? Well, A, by looking at A, here's A, so I look what corresponds with A. A is negative 2. Well, if A is negative 2, I know that the parabola should open down. So do my green points go down from my vertex? You bet, they sure do. So now we can go ahead and reflect the points, if I can spell it right, reflect points for step 5. So starting from this first green point, I go 1 to my axis of symmetry, and then I go 1 away from it, put a point. From this point here, I have to go 2 coordinates to my axis of symmetry, and I have to go 2 away and put a point. I have 5 points, so since we have 5 points, let's try to draw a U-shaped graph, which is a parabola. This could be my best U-shaped graph so far this year, and I kind of screwed it up there, but it's still a U at the bottom, and that gives us a parabola. So let's cover our steps real quick. The first thing we did to graph y equals ax squared plus bx plus c is draw the axis of symmetry. That was x equals negative b over 2a. Next step is to plot the vertex by plugging in x. All right, so you plugged this guy in for your x, and that gave you a y. Next step, you choose 2 more values for x that are less than this guy in step number 1. Next, does the parabola open up or down? If your points are both right, go ahead and reflect the points, and then finally you get to do the fun part, which is draw the parabola. Now, determining whether we have maximum or minimum values, right? We have this guy where a is greater than 0. If a is greater than 0, we have to remember that our parabola will open up. So if the parabola will open up, what will be our lowest value? We will have a lowest value, which will give us a minimum. But if we jump over here, and this a is less than 0, a is less than 0, so that would be a negative 2, negative 3, the parabola will open down, giving us a maximum. 2 more examples here really quick. Now it says, state whether the function has a minimum value or a maximum value. Well, let me help us out here first. This is a function. There is nothing different between a function than an equation than just the f of x. So if you don't like that f of x, let me change it into an equation for you. Y, much better. So now, is my a positive or negative? It is negative. So a is negative, so I know that it opens down. So if I know that it opens down, looking at the last slide again, if it opens down, we have a maximum. So here we have a maximum. I'm not going to spell it out for you. It's maximum. And then finally, we have a positive 2 for a. Here's our a. Here's our a. We have a positive 2. So going back to the last slide, if we have a positive number, we're going to have a minimum. So therefore, for number 4, we're going to have a min for my last one. And that concludes section 10.2. Have a great rest of your day.